highlights. Tinubu's regime's oppression surpasses even military dictatorships, Atiku. Ex-partner who killed Ugandan athlete dies from burns. Australian Prime Minister moves to ban children from social media. Good afternoon and welcome to the World News on Radio Afinju. My name is Pearl Durotoye. The news in detail. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has berated the federal government over the arrest of the President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, by the Department of State Services and the takeover of the Abuja office of the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. News outlets had reported that Ajaero was arrested in the early hours of Monday by the Department of State Service at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. On the same day, DSS operatives laid siege to SERAP's office in Abuja. The 2023 presidential candidate of the PDP, in a statement posted on his verified X account on Tuesday, warned that the level of oppression control now imposed surpasses even the harshest days of military dictatorship. Chieftains of the All Progressive Congress in Irele Council area of Ondo State have declared that the party will rule the state for the next 16 years. Rising from a political meeting held in the council headquarters to show up support for Governor Lucky Ayedatiwa ahead of the November 16 governorship primary, the leaders said there is no vacancy in the government house. The party leaders, including the special advisor to the state governor, Lucky Ayedatiwa, on health, Simidele Odimayo, a barrister, Morayo Lebi, the local government chairman of the party, Chief Zachariah Omoge, among others, said that the APC will win the governorship poll with a wide margin. They urged the party faithful to ensure that they deliver Governor Ayedatiwa across the wards and units of the local government in the forthcoming poll. Addressing the gathering, the special advisor to the state governor, Simidele Odimayo, who described Governor Ayedatiwa as a unifier, disclosed that there was no opposition to the re-election of the governor. Abia State government has postponed the resumption date for both public and private schools in the state for the 2024-2025 academic session. Commissioner for Information, Oke Kanu, who disclosed this during the press briefing on the outcome of this week's Executive Council meeting in Umuahia, gave a coinciding Muslim holiday as a reason for the postponement. According to him, schools across the state will now resume on Wednesday, September 23, instead of Monday, September 16, originally scheduled. This is as he announced that the second batch of training for teachers would commence on September 11 and end on September 20. According to him, the exercise will be held simultaneously at three centers, Aba, Umuahia, and Ohafia, adding that 1,800 teachers are being targeted. He said the training was part of the ongoing transformation agenda of the current administration in the education sector. The commissioner said over 200 teachers were trained in the first batch, adding that it was part of the protocols for school resumption. He further announced that the state government had granted a 90-day moratorium to owners of landed property without registration in Aba to register them at the old rate. This, he explained, was born out of the governor's magnanimity and compassionate disposition towards governance. Following the devastating flood that ravaged parts of Maiduguri metropolis, news correspondents observed that crocodiles, snakes, and other dangerous animals have taken over the affected areas, especially Post Office and Monday Market's general area, which is located near the Shehu Kiarim Park Zoo. It was also gathered that apart from the Shehu's Palace, some parts of University of Maiduguri and its teaching hospital, Gwange, Moromoro, State Low Cost, 500 Abagana Housing Estate, Popular Monday Market, Lagos Streets, NUJ Center, Government House is also submerged, leaving millions of people displaced with property worth billions of naira destroyed. As at press time, thousands of people were sighted evacuating few of their belongings to safer areas like Bulumkutu, Gumari Airport, Tashan Baga, among others, even as victims cries for government to come to their aid. Unconfirmed reports from sources revealed that many lives were consumed in the ongoing flooding. Unfortunately, the incident is taking place when Governor Babagana Zulum was out of the country, while his deputy, Umar Kadafur, is also out for his annual leave. The police public relations officer of the Borno Command, ASP Kenneth Dasso, have also alerted the general public to be vigilant as the police and other relevant stakeholders are doing everything possible to safeguard lives and property in this trying moment. Away from Nigeria, the former boyfriend of Ugandan Olympic athlete Rebecca Cheptegei, who killed her by setting her on fire, has himself died from burns sustained in the attack, a Kenyan hospital official has said. Dixon Ndiema ambushed the marathon runner as she returned home from church with her 2 children more than a week ago, before dousing her with petrol and setting her ablaze. Local administrators said the two had been in conflict over a small piece of land in northwest Kenya where Cheptegei lived and trained. Ndiema died on Monday night at the intensive care unit where he had been admitted with more than 30% burns on his body, according to Dr. Owen Menak from Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. Ms. Cheptegei died last Thursday from 80% burns she sustained during the attack 4 days earlier. In Asia, a busy bridge in northern Vietnam collapsed after being hit by Super Typhoon Yagi, which has killed more than 60 people since making landfall on Saturday. Dashcam footage showed the moment the Phong Cao Bridge in Phu Thong province gave way on Monday, plunging several vehicles into the water below. Searches were underway for 13 people. Vietnam's most powerful storm in 30 years has wreaked havoc across the north of the country, leaving 1.5 million people without power. Although it is now weakened into a tropical depression, authorities have warned Yagi will create more disruption as it moves westwards. More than 240 people have been injured by the typhoon, which brought winds of up to 203 km per hour and is Asia's most powerful storm so far this year. 10 cars and 2 scooters fell into the Red River following the collapse of the Phong Cao Bridge. Deputy Prime Minister Ho Dok-Fook said the moment a lorry plummeted into the water as the bridge deck ahead fell away before the driver had time to stop was also captured on camera. At least 3 people have been rescued from the river so far. Part of the 375-meter structure is still standing, and the military has been instructed to build a pontoon bridge across the gap as soon as possible. The typhoon tore roofs from buildings, uprooted trees, and left widespread damage to infrastructure and factories in the north. Some 600,000 people have gathered in a field outside Timor-Leste's capital, Dili, for one of the biggest masses of Pope Francis' papacy. The open-air congregation represents nearly half the population of the small Southeast Asian country, one of the most Roman Catholic places on earth, and the only Catholic majority nation the Pontiff is visiting on his Asia-Pacific tour. In anticipation of the crowds, at least one local telecom company had informed customers that their signal at the venue would be affected. Tuesday's mass is being held on disputed ground in Tasitolu, where authorities recently demolished homes and evicted nearly 90 people. The move attracted strong criticism from local residents, hundreds of whom had moved there over the past decade from rural parts of the country. Many came looking for work in the capital and built basic homes in the area. The government says they are squatting and have no rights to live on the land. In the United Kingdom, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has urged Labour members of Parliament to back her plan to cut winter-fuel payments. More than 9 million pensioners will no longer be eligible for up to £300 this winter after Reeves announced the introduction of means testing following Labour's election win. There are concerns dozens of Labour MPs could abstain in the vote on the policy in Parliament later, amid worry pensioners on modest incomes may miss out this winter. In a call for solidarity ahead of that vote, Reeves said the blame should fall on reckless decisions on public finances by the Conservatives. Addressing MPs at a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party on Monday evening, The Chancellor told them the government's committee to the triple lock meant the state pension had risen by around £900 compared with a year ago. Under the triple lock, the state pension goes up each year by either 2.5%, inflation, or average earnings, whichever is the highest figure. This means that from April, the full state pension is expected to rise by £460 a year, following the release of the latest official wages data. Reeves and Prime Minister Keir Starmer insist the winter fuel payment cut, worth about £1.5 billion, is necessary to fill an alleged £22 billion black hole in the budget left by the previous Conservative government. Meanwhile, thousands of prisoners in British jails were due to be released early today as part of government moves to ease overcrowding. Recently released figures show that the prison population in England and Wales was at its highest ever level. But with concern about released prisoners reoffending, the government insisted that no violent offenders or domestic abusers will be eligible for early release. Business Minister Jonathan Reynolds told news outlets that it was a difficult decision to release the 1,700 prisoners. Downing Street has said the policy was required to avoid unchecked criminality, where recently convicted criminals have been spared jail sentences because there was no places available. Reynolds placed the blame on the last Conservative government, which was voted out in July, saying the decision could have been made prior to the election, but that it had given up on governing. Chief Inspector of Probation, Martin Jones, told reporters that the pressure on prisons was extreme. Jones warned that it was a certainty that some will reoffend, highlighting that around a third of people released from prison each year go on to commit further offences within a year. Reynolds insisted that no violent offenders will be eligible for early release. The prison population had swollen in recent months by those convicted of taking part in anti-immigration riots across England. The government has said those involved in the unrest would not be excluded from the early release plans. In Europe, Russian officials say they shot down 144 Ukrainian drones around the country overnight in a wave of attacks that have killed one woman, set residential buildings on fire, and grounded flights in Moscow. The governor of Moscow, Andrei Vorobyov, said several flats in two high-rise apartment buildings in Ramenskoye in Moscow region were set on fire. Vorobyov said a 46-year-old woman died and 3 people were injured in Ramenskoye, while 43 people were evacuated to temporary accommodation centers. Ukraine has so far not commented on the attacks. Russia's defense ministry said on Tuesday that of the 144 drones that its air defenses intercepted, half were in the western border region of Bryansk, 20 were in Moscow, and 14 were over the Kursk region. State media reported that the strikes shut down 4 airports in Moscow, and more than 30 domestic and international flights that served the Russian capital were suspended. Russia's aviation authority, Rosaviatsia, confirmed on Telegram on Tuesday morning that 3 of the airports, Domodedovo, Zhukovsky, and Vnukovo, had resumed operations. In other developments on Tuesday, Russia said it had captured at least 3 villages in the Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine. The Defense Ministry also said it had liberated the town of Krasnohorivka and also in Donetsk. Europe's top court has ruled Google must pay a €2.4 billion fine handed down for abusing the market dominance of its shopping comparison service. Google said it was disappointed with the ruling. The tech giant had appealed against the fine, which was originally levied by the European Commission in 2017. It brings an end to a long-running case that was first brought by British firm Foundem in 2009, when the UK was still part of the EU. Another of the complainants, shopping comparison site Kelcool, called the ruling a win for fair competition and consumer choice in a post on X. The European Court of Justice, which made the judgment, said in its ruling the commissioner was right to find Google's conduct discriminatory and its appeal must be dismissed in its entirety. It ordered Google and owner Alphabet to bear their own costs and pay the costs incurred by the European Union. In a statement, Google pointed out it had made changes in 2017 to comply with the European Commission's decision. On Monday, Google was taken to court by the US government over its ad tech business. It has been accused of illegally operating a monopoly, and the trial is ongoing. Last week, UK regulators provisionally concluded Google used anti-competitive practices to dominate the market for online advertising technology. The EU is also currently investigating the firm over whether it preferences its own goods and services over others in search results as part of its Digital Markets Act. If it finds Google guilty, the firm could face a fine of up to 10% of its annual turnover. In a similar development, Apple has been told to pay 13 billion euros in unpaid taxes to Ireland by the European Court of Justice. The European Commission accused Ireland of giving Apple illegal tax advantages 8 years ago, but the Irish government has consistently argued against the need for the tax to be paid. The ECJ said its decision on the matter was final and that Ireland granted Apple unlawful aid which Ireland is required to recover. Apple said it was disappointed with the decision and accused the European Commission of trying to retroactively change the rules. The bad news for Apple comes a day after the tech giant released its new iPhone 16 range. In the Americas, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced a plan to ban children from using social media. The Prime Minister on Tuesday said that the government would introduce legislation in 2024 to enforce a minimum age for access to social media and other relevant digital platforms. He said that the legislation would be informed by engagement with the states and territories, but his preference is set to the minimum age of 16 years. According to a poll conducted by state broadcaster, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in August, 61% of Australians supported restricting social media access to those younger than 17. At the same time, Peter Malinauskas, the Premier of South Australia, commissioned former federal judge Robert French to explore legal pathways to ban children younger than 14 from social media. The Prime Minister said that the federal government would consider Robert French's review when drafting the legislation. Presidential candidates Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are having their only currently scheduled face-off presidential debate Tuesday night. Joe Biden's poor performance in the first presidential debate in late June created a firestorm of pressure within the Democratic Party that ultimately forced him to abandon his re-election campaign. Even though Kamala Harris has been vice president for more than 3 years and a candidate for president for 7 weeks, she is still a relative unknown for many Americans. In a recent survey, 28% of likely November voters said that they needed to know more about the Californian. The poll showed the race a statistical dead heat, a finding most recent surveys have also indicated, both nationally and in key battleground states. The 2024 presidential campaign has been full of historic tumult, but the American electorate is still sharply and narrowly divided. In the Middle East, at least 13 people have been killed in an overnight Israeli strike in the designated humanitarian zone in southern Gaza, a local hospital says. Residents said 3 missiles hit a tented camp crowded with displaced Palestinians in the Al-Mawasi area, southwest of the city of Khan Yunis, leaving 7 meters deep craters. The Israeli military said its aircraft attacked what it called a number of senior Hamas terrorists operating there, a claim Hamas denied. The military also disputed the initial death toll put out by the Hamas-run Civil Defense Authority, which reported that rescue teams had recovered more than 40 bodies. Hundreds of thousands of people from other areas of Gaza are living in dire conditions in Al-Mawasi after being told by Israel to evacuate there for their own safety. Eyewitnesses told news outlets that large explosions rocked the area shortly after midnight on Tuesday and that flames could be seen rising into the sky. The Civil Defense Operations Director said overnight that more than 40 people were killed and more than 60 others were injured. He also warned that many are still under the rubble. There was no immediate casualty report from Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry. Later on Monday, An official at the nearby Nassar Hospital in Khan Yunis said 13 people killed in the strike had been brought there. In a statement, the Israel Defense Forces (IDF) said aircraft had conducted a precise strike on a number of senior Hamas terrorists who were operating within a command and control center embedded inside the humanitarian area. They included Sama Abu Dakar, head of Hamas aerial unit, and Osama Tabesh, head of the Observation and Targets Department in Hamas military intelligence headquarters, it added. Prior to the strike, extensive intelligence gathering was conducted, as well as continuous aerial surveillance in the hours leading up to the strike, which confirmed the presence of the terrorists in the area alongside additional terrorist operatives. The IDF accused Hamas of embedding its operatives and military infrastructure in the humanitarian zone and using civilians as human shields. A Hamas statement denounced the strike on al-Mawasi as a heinous massacre and rejected the IDF's claim that it had a command center there. Now talking sports. The Super Falconets will face Japan in the round of 16 of the 2024 FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup at Estadio Metropolitano de Bogota on Tech Friday, September 13. To reach this stage, Christopher Danjuma's team steamrolled Venezuela 4-0 at Pascal Guerrero Stadium, Cali, on Saturday to finish second behind Germany in the group with 6, having edged South Korea in the opening match that was followed by a 3-1 loss to the Germans, who secured maximum points. They have their job cut out against Japan, one of the teams with 100% record at the group stage. The Asian giants have also been rampant in front of goal and rock solid at the back, scoring 13 and conceding just 1 goal in 3 matches to finish top of Group E with 9 points with a whopping 12-goal difference. They started their campaign by making mincemeat of New Zealand with 7 unreplied goals, trounced Ghana 4-1 in their second, and rounded off preliminary assignment with a 2-0 thrashing of Austria. Should the Falconets triumph, they will face either Spain or Canada in the quarterfinals. Before we go, here again are the highlights. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has berated the federal government over the arrest of the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, by the Department of State Services and the takeover of the Abuja office of the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. The former boyfriend of Ugandan Olympic athlete Rebecca Cheptegei, who killed her by setting her on fire, has himself died from burns sustained in the attack, a Kenyan hospital official has said. In the Americas, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced a plan to ban children from using social media. That was the world news on Radio Afinju. To view our channel, please follow us on Facebook, Radio Afinju, X, Radio Afinju, YouTube, Afinju FM. You can also stream live on Zeno FM at Radio Afinju. My name is Durotoye. Thanks for listening. Good afternoon.